Welcome, welcome, my friends, to our fireside chat talking about why AI needs a strong workflow foundation. And today I'm joined by my colleague and friend, Jason Henderberg, the owner of Henderberg Business Solutions LLC. Welcome, welcome, Jason.
Hi, Lena. Good to see you again.
Good to see you again. Yes, Jason and I recorded a Be the Glue conversation, so go check that out. We'll put the link. And we had such an awesome time talking about process, and we're like, we got to do this again and talk about AI
Always great
and process.
conversations.
Always. So, Jason, you have been helping small businesses to grow efficiently for over 30 years in numerous leadership roles, and also you're specializing in this process documentation, right?
Correct.
Um, so, before we start jumping into like tools and prompts and automation and at this world of I feel like we got to start talking about process itself, right? Like AI can be definitely like incredibly helpful, but if we apply it to broken processes, because that's the experience I'm having, or
Right.
even unclear workflows, it can create a mess. It can create confusion, all sorts of stuff. So today we'll be talking about this process before prompts. And maybe we start with you sharing a little bit about your background and how you think about process improvement.
Sure. Yeah. Thank you, Elena. So my business is really a general business consultancy. And as you mentioned, I focus on process documentation. And I really feel that's the heart of every company's ability to work efficiently. Because if you haven't really mapped out and documented how you do things, how your employees work, and truly understand the steps and the workflows that make your business operate, then you're just got this facade that you're working in. And when you do the work of an investment in time and energy into really getting to know your employees, not only do they feel good about the fact that you're showing an interest in their business and how they work and what their specialties are, but you're creating this operations manual that will allow others to operate at that same high level. And then you can make improvements after that once you really understand how things are operating. But most people don't stop and write things down and record videos and generate graphics because they're so busy doing the work. And that I think is a big place where they can fall down by avoiding that.
Yeah. Yeah. And then they become a bottleneck, right? So if they don't
Correct.
have that ops manual for others to take steps, if I'm out of the office, something happens to me, like that
Correct.
becomes a bottleneck, right? Nobody knows
Yeah.
what to do. So what are you seeing with AI? What are you experiencing in your field? Tell us some things. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a question that gets asked often to me. Oh, is that going to replace my job as somebody that specializes in documentation? Because people can very easily, as you know, look up whatever question they've got right now. But most of the work that we do with inside a business or a board or a nonprofit, all of those are intrinsic to that organization. There's specialty types of guidance on how their individual teams working. So even if you're working with a generic software like a QuickBooks or something like that, you're still doing it in a unique way for your team. So it's still very important to really have a better understanding of how people are operating with that. But AI right now is a tool to do this type of work faster and more comprehensively and be able to engage your employees in ways you could never do before. If you wanted, for example, like a graphic or a video made, you'd have to stop and hire a video company or hire a graphic artist to develop that type of media to explain how you're doing a certain task. And now, if you have the right prompts, you can develop that, in minutes. And that allows your employees to be far more engaged in how they're doing the work, doing it at a better level so that they feel appreciated and they actually are successful in their job because they understand it because you've created a better ops manual.
Hmm. So, okay, you said, will AI replace my job? And this question keeps coming up over and over. I recorded two other sessions and that was also part of that conversation. And the interesting part is, and why I wanted to talk about process is that people look at this very holistically. But when it comes down to AI replacing jobs, I think AI will replace tasks within a job,
Tasks, yes.
not necessarily the full job overall, right? Itself, maybe in some cases. But I think it's until you're able to break your job down into tasks and into processes and into workflows, I think that is when you can use AI. Now, what I'm seeing is they're like, oh, let's use AI for the sake of using AI and all these tools. And when people hear AI, they think of ChatGPT and nothing else, right? And but they get so excited about the tools, and then they're adding it too quickly in processes that maybe they are not optimized. So, have
Correct.
you seen examples where technology made like a bad process even worse with AI now?
Yeah, the old saying of garbage in, garbage out is true. So, like you said, AI is kind of a magnifier of a process. So if it's bad to start with, it's only going to get worse to start. Once you start adding that in, you're going to make it efficiently more bad or not as high quality. So what we want to do is often is develop a really good understanding of what's being done and why the person is doing the task, what the outcome is first before we start optimizing it with AI. So in my specialty, we use AI to expand on content or something you've written out about how you're doing a job to make it more understandable. Or you could use AI to change the language or the tone. So if you're writing out something from your perspective in the office, maybe as an HR director for how somebody in a skilled trade, for example, is doing their job, you can actually have that rewritten from their perspective and change the tone and the wording so that it's maybe not as complicated or maybe it has more jargon that they would understand compared to what you know in the office. So it's finding ways, if you're talking about chat, to use it to your advantage to improve something. But you've got to start with the core competency of what needs to be documented. You need to understand who's doing it, why you're doing it, how it relates to the other employees before you start adding on fancier graphics and expanding on the text. But yeah, it can go wrong quickly if you've got something in place that needs improvement and you just try to magnify it first. So it's not always the best practice. Hope you're muted there.
So, for someone in HR, of course, the mute button, right? So a lot of HR professionals might not have had like a Lean Six Sigma background or a process improvement or even project management backgrounds. But let's go, basics. For someone in HR who has never formally mapped a process, where could they start? What would be your initial thought around that? Other than the
Yes,
clarity, you did mention the clarity,
sure,
right?
sure. The fundamental thing I think that's very important, especially from an HR director or manager perspective, is to get your team involved as soon as you can in the process. As with any other change management, where you're trying to look into somebody else's world and potentially make improvements or changes, that can be quickly become uncomfortable for that person. So the sooner you can get them involved with clearly understanding why you're doing the work, why you want to investigate and extract information from them and see what they're doing, the better. So giving them really good context up front. Then get them involved in the process by asking them questions about their best practices and ask them questions about what's the things that are missing maybe from their day or that they find could be made better because often employees are just not heard. And that's where the HR professional can be different or more beneficial than a frontline supervisor. The supervisor is tasked with getting a job done, and the HR professional can be the one that's more empathetic and say, okay, but do you have other thoughts, employee, on how you're doing this? Because they
Mhm.
typically do. They're the ones doing the work. They're going to have frustrations. They're going to be the ones that maybe have ideas on how things could be improved, but nobody's asked them. So when you stop and ask some thoughtful questions up front, that's when you're able to really get some good traction to start with, and you're involving those team members from the beginning. So once the process has been documented and you want to change things, they're going to be very much in tune with wanting to help with that process and not resisting to it because, oh, you're just telling me what to do. But the employee really needs to be, or the conversations need to be focused on who are the key people involved? What do they need to be accomplishing? and how, again, how does that relate to the other employees? And that's really what a workflow is you're looking at the
Mhm.
continuation of your service or your product, whatever you're trying to produce, from one person or one department to another. But it starts with that understanding of why. Why are we moving this forward? Where can we remove waste? What's the purpose of what we're doing?
Yeah, and so for HR, like we have processes that are so interdepartmental and so interconnected with other teams and other departments. And what I'm finding is that we understand our piece and we understand the tasks and the steps that we do. And then when it goes out of our hands, we don't always understand what else happens. And I think where I'm sitting is I need to understand the full process before I can say, well, where do we bring an AI tool or, something to help? And I'm finding even more waste or repetition of work or more duplication of work,
Yeah.
you know, because maybe we're assuming that this is what we're doing in HR, but then you have in IT similar steps being taken. And if we had actually talked to each other, right? We could have probably eliminated some of those steps. So
Yeah.
how do you figure out who's involved? Where are the handoffs? Where do things slow down and those bottlenecks?
Yeah, that's the foundational work before you get into making fancy graphics with AI and all those other things we use for advanced process documentation. It's leveraging chat or whatever medium you would like to use for your partner to ask it to give you questions back. So put in the context of I'm going to be working with this type of a team in this type of an industry and say I would like this type of an outcome. We're trying to really get to the heart of what the workflow is. Tell me, chat, what should I ask question? What key questions should I ask this employee so that they feel heard and they feel comfortable asking me, or I'm sorry, telling me more about their position? And that's when you're going to get the really in-depth questions that maybe you didn't think about because there's all these different perspectives that chat will push back at you. In the past, if you had a coworker, you could bounce ideas off or you could collaborate on what ideas, on what questions to ask. But now chat is like that times a million. So, they'll might give you 5 questions back and you're like, yeah, I don't like really 3 of those. Ask it again. Ask, okay, but I understand that, but what about these questions that will give this type of a final response from the employee? What about that? And it'll continuously, as you know, give you better and better responses. And then you can take that, make it your own, put it in your own language, right? You're not going to read that verbatim, but that's what you want to bring to the employee then and say, hey, I've been thinking about this, and here's a couple of questions I've got for you. Do you have a minute? And when you then ask those questions that are on target and have purpose, you're going to get a much better response. And then you'll be able to get to the heart of how they're doing their work.
Yeah. And then once the process is cleaner, right? You have outlined it, you know exactly who's doing what, how, and when. How do you then decide where AI could really be of help?
Sure. Then it comes down to the next step would be to make sure you have good content to start with. So it could be written content. So somebody writing out a basic procedure, even if it's not fully, just like a rough draft would be fine. Or you do a video recording. It could be a Zoom recording of somebody in the office or a iPhone or GoPro recording of somebody in the field or on a machine shop floor or wherever you're filming. Get that initial content back, and we can then turn that into a actual detailed process using AI. I still prefer we have writing out the actual steps first and really fully understanding it before you start using AI.
Yeah.
But you could bring it in earlier. But then after that, you can use AI to create like a whiteboard video from that training or a couple of nice graphics that are branded for your company colors
Mm.
that people can relate to. And maybe you've got a learner that prefers reading or prefers watching a whiteboard video or prefers seeing a graphic to explain a concept that locks it in for them and that brings their knowledge to life. And that's what we're trying to achieve. At the end of the day, we just want to be able to share that knowledge freely with everybody. And you just have to tap into each type of employee's style, not by asking them what their style is. I mean, you could ask that, but when we're generating content, we have the ability now to create a wide swath of styles all within one training workflow, text, graphics, videos. in the same amount of time it would have taken before to just write out the steps in a notebook and put it in a 3-ring binder. Like nobody's looking at that. But
Yeah.
that's the quality. That's what AI is bringing to the process documentation game is the quality and depth
Yep.
of the knowledge we're sharing.
But you need that because even for you to go in Claude and create a skill, you're
Yeah.
going to need that narrative and you're going to
Hmm.
need that very detailed step by step. And I love what you said before. Um, you said, like you could go and talk it through with a coworker. And I think of these tools, some of these LLMs, they are like the coworkers. So,
Correct.
right, like Claude Cowork is basically that. Let's work
Right.
together. Let's figure this out together, right? Same with like, Chat GPT is like trying that with Codex or right. But so you are going to need the step by step, even when you go to build a skill in Claude, before you can automate a process and create a workflow, you're going to need to build that SOP first, that
Correct.
standard operating procedure. So then I guess when do you say like this process is not ready for AI yet? Like, and are people accepting that, right? Like, are they accepting that it's okay not to use AI in this piece of the process or this process?
Yeah, I think it's critical to not use it for the fundamental startup. Somebody's got to think through what their purpose is, why they're doing the work, and how they're doing it. Again, unless it's something completely generic that you can just pull a YouTube video on, like how to change the lint filter on your dryer or something like that, that everybody's got videos on. That's not what we're documenting for your staff. It's really the critical steps, how they specifically do something for your specific company. And that starts with somebody that has the skill that you hire, that you're paying this person for, that you can stop and listen to them and appreciate the work that they do. And that's kind of how I like to frame it when we're working with clients is we have a whole script that we give the employee first before we ever start hitting record on and extracting the knowledge, is explaining that we're talking to you not because we're trying to find a mistake. We're trying to find the best things that you do, the skill that you're bringing to the table, and we really want to know the good, the bad, and the ugly about what you think the process is
Mhm.
current state, how it's actually working. So if you've got some ideas on improving it, let's talk about it. If you think that there's a critical step that if somebody else doesn't do that, we need to know about it. But that person should know those things. And
Yeah.
once we capture that, then we can expand on it and make it pretty. But I always say we want to get things to a good enough state that things are accurate and understandable.
Yeah.
And that flies in the face of my upbringing for decades of like Lean Six Sigma. If you're not familiar with that, is a very, very high level of making things like completely foolproof, where there can be no error because it's so perfect of a process. But that's not the real world for most cases. So our
Yeah.
goal is to be good enough. So we've got the core knowledge extracted from the employee and we document it so that it's clean and
Yeah.
organized and can be shared. And we'll make it better after that. But it starts with the fundamentals.
And it's okay to say that, hey, in this process, there's a human in the loop where the human has to do
Yes.
something.
Yep.
So you might not be able to automate the full workflow or the full process, but
Correct.
can you automate pieces of it? And this is where I go back to that, like dissecting the jobs into tasks is going to be so important because everybody thinks, oh, I'm onboarding people. Well, yes, you're onboarding, but what are the pieces of onboarding an employee that you can automate? Can you automate emails? And can you maybe have AI generate a welcome email instead of you typing it in, right? Like, what are
Mhm.
those tasks or little things that you can do in the process, but you won't know until you make it clear and write it down and really clarify step by step.
Yeah, onboarding is probably one of the biggest things that my clients overlook. Usually when I'm brought in, we're trying to find a specific problem where they've got a key person that needs their actions documented or a department is struggling. We want to improve it, so we're going to document there first. But onboarding for me is probably the most important thing to capture. And that's for a couple reasons. First of all, when you've got a new employee coming on, especially these days, when people job hop and aren't feeling secure in their job or why I got hired, did I make the right choice when I got hired?
Mhm.
it's all about the employees now. It's no longer about the employer. So we need to do as much of a sales job, not just to get the employee hired and into that seat and make sure it's the right employee. We need to make them feel good about the decision that they made to come work for the employer. And that's opposite of how it's ever been in society. So if your company's got some cool things they've done, even if you've only been in business a couple of years, let's highlight that. If you've been around for 50 or 100 years, let's get that timeline together and some cool pictures and how they fit into this huge timeline and show them that this is an exciting place to work. Here's how we do it, and I'm glad you're here. Let's get to work. Here's an organized process manual on how to do that together. So that's very important for me to capture that. But not only for the employee side, but on the employer side, there's efficiencies that can be really, really captured here. Most employers will have a manager or coworker sit with that employee and then they leave and then sit with them and train them again. And then that employee potentially leaves and you're just wasting all of that onboarding time. So if you've captured a lot of that basic how to, we'll let them watch videos, read context, and do some training on that on their computer. But that's not just a standalone. We still need a coworker or somebody else showing them a personal interaction to really take that and bring it to life. Okay, so you did some training on XYZ. Here's how it is in the real world. Let's go take a look at an employee doing it in real time. So it's a combination of very efficient training that's been documented to strip out all of that wasted basics in a manager's day, and then couple it with an HR professional or a supervisor that's been trained well on how to do that onboarding. And this is where AI is very helpful. Is we're now taking training documents, do this, 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 this. We're making a copy of it, and we're using AI to create a supervisor version for onboarding or training that employee for that exact topic. So this is really cool stuff. We've been doing this in
Oh,
several
tell me
places
more.
across the
Tell me
country.
more about, is it more of a simulation or what
Yeah.
is, yeah?
No, this is some really cool things and this is probably one of the best cases for AI beyond the whiteboard videos and graphics and fun stuff. Because supervisors are so busy, they have a specific viewpoint of how somebody should be trained. They're probably losing out on things where they forgot to ask a question, they forgot to tell them something specific, and it's inconsistent. So this supervisor is not training the same way as another one. So
Mm.
what we do is we take all of these steps that an employee is supposed to learn on, we'll just say if you're an electrician, how to come on board as an electrician, and we literally copy paste them, then run each step through chat with a query that says something to the effect of take this context that we're training to this type of an employee and produce 5 questions they should ask so that they know that the employee is being engaged. Make 5 suggestions that would help the employee learn.
Yeah.
Make 5, like you just keep asking these questions or suggestions, and that now becomes a supervisor version that runs simultaneous to the employee's version. And so when they get back together, the employee's already done their training. They
Mm.
get back together, they're in a meeting room, and now the supervisor can just pick off of this list and ask specific questions or don't forget to do
Yeah.
this or don't forget to do that. But they're very prepared with very thoughtful questions now to really engage what they already learned with the real life application. And this is something I've seen over the years that HR professionals and supervisors
Yeah.
struggle with because you don't have all the answers, especially from an HR perspective. Like you don't know what that employee does, right? Your job is to
Mhm.
get them to the table and get everybody talking, but you can't ask that. But if you've got a list of questions that run next to the training, anybody then could be helpful in onboarding that employee, and everybody wins. The employee feels good, and they get thoughtful questions asked, and the supervisor or HR professional now feels good because they know they've done a good job and aren't like just scattered when they meet with the person.
Yeah. And what you're hitting on the nail there is for like bigger organizations, what happens is HR owns the corporate onboarding piece, but then the division owns the
Yeah.
divisional onboarding, and there's always a disconnect between the
Yes.
two. So I love that idea. I'm gonna take it and like play around into like how can we improve for larger organizations, how can we improve onboarding? That's an interesting thought. where you
That's
have
that's what I
AI
love
on both
AI for.
sides.
It's
Yeah.
getting questions, right? You did the questions when
Yeah.
you first engage the employee. You got questions for onboarding. Getting questions, that's what it's really all about is things, oh, I would never have thought of asking that. But now you've got a list
Yeah.
and you're not going to read through all of them and ask all those questions, but now you've got a selection and that whoever person is asking the questions not going, oh, I like that one. That relates to me. Boom, ask it.
Yeah. And are there like other processes you can think of where HR can benefit from mapping and even using AI?
Yeah, I mean, there's a good process mapping one would be like Notebook LM is as a Google product, and that's free for limited use that you can pull up. Like we use that for creating graphics, use that for creating whiteboard videos, but also you can mind map off of there, so you can throw a concept up and see how the process should flow and how it relates to other departments and other steps in the process. But yeah, so there's so many ideas, ways of iterating on things now using AI. But yeah, process mapping again, for me, it comes back to what's the relationship between everybody? So how can we remove that disconnect that you mentioned
Yeah.
and ask those questions or put those queries into a chat to get a more thoughtful response?
What are some maybe mistakes that HR people can avoid as they get into process more and into this usage of AI?
Yeah, yeah. And typically HR is separate from process, but these days HR professionals, you have to be doing all of that together. You really, it's all one. So the more that you can leverage it to truly understand how each of your staff members are working, and you don't have to be able to do their job, but really understand how they're doing their job at a high level and what their pain points are and what their needs are, then you'll be able to again ask those questions to them to see if there's gaps, to see if they need extra help, if or you could run a model to see how much time they're spending on different tasks by looking at their timesheet. If you have them generate data that way and have chat, analyze all of those numbers and see like, wow, we really do need extra help there. The person's saying they've been busy and overworked, but we didn't think it was really necessary. But wow, look at the numbers,
Yeah.
right? You can have it look at the math that way to validate, and then you can say to an owner, "Yep, here's the root cause of why this employee is so stressed. We're going to lose them if we don't get some backup help in here. We can't keep asking to work Saturdays." And it'll give
Yeah.
you a just cause for maybe making a hiring position or something like that.
What is maybe a small step that someone could take this week and I don't know, dive into workflows or dive into, process, especially people who are not used to doing this?
Yeah, especially from the HR perspective, I would start with onboarding. I know it sounds like, hey, it's not contributing to the actual work being done in your company. Again, product service doesn't matter. But the onboarding is so overlooked every place I go that I think that would be the best place for somebody to start and experiment with this. And it's as simple as what are those steps that you're doing when they come on? And from the HR side, you're going to be giving them their tax forms and you're going to giving them, do I need their email set up for them? Do I need to buy company merch for them? What size shirt do they need? All of those little things are the processes, individual processes. Those add up to the system. So the little processes that you're repeating over and over again,
Yeah.
that's the system. So we're looking at just write all those down, create a checklist. It doesn't not have to be complex what you're doing to create a workflow. But from day one, when they walk in, who are they talking to? Is it a supervisor? Is it the HR professional? Then what do they do? Like time map it. Certain times that you're
Mhm.
after this morning, then you're going to meet with a coworker and sit with them for half an hour. Good. Write that down. And then just day by day, get that onboarding dialed in and then test it. So try it out and see if that's actually something that's viable after you hire a new employee. And that's the place to start too, by the way, is if you've got a new position coming in for somebody like an accounts payable. Oh, I'm going to be hiring somebody in a couple of weeks. Start there. That's what you want. You want a real life tangible case to work with
Yep.
that you're going to not be wasting your time developing. So if that AP person's coming on in a couple of weeks, start mapping out what it's going to look like for them to come on board, every detail, and then try it when they come on. Make sure you're working with the supervisor in tandem so they know why we're doing this to make it easier and go through each of those steps and see if there's any gaps. go one step further. Tell the employee, hey, we're working on improving our operations manual and we really value your input. So this onboarding is as good
Yeah.
as we've got it right now, but what do you think about it? Please tell us what your feedback is. And wow, they're asking their opinion on day one for my opinion. They're going to feel valued. And again, that's going to lock them in and
Yeah.
hopefully they want to stick around longer. But that's really the best way to start is something simple like just writing down each of your onboarding steps and try it. Test and tune, make it better as you go. But
Yeah.
you're involving your people. And that's the place that AI can't replace is that human interaction. We're just using AI to augment, ask questions better, and how can I better engage with employees so that they feel valued and welcome when they come on board?
So, and when I think of onboarding, onboarding is such a loaded
Yeah,
question or loaded word, I guess, because I think of it, there's multiple sub pieces to onboarding, right? You have the pre-boarding, which is really that the moment the person said yes to the
correct.
offer, all the way to day one. That
Yep.
is really your pre-boarding, where I'm thinking of like that's when you do your you're welcome. You could do like a little video from the organization, like talk about your culture. But then
Yeah.
that is the time to also do all those like I-9s and W-4s and all the legalities and the questionnaires and the attestations, right? Then you have day one experience. Then you have your first week experience.
Yes. Yep.
Then you have your 30 days, then 60 and 90 days. And the bigger organizations, they do are a lot more thoughtful when it comes to the employee experience. But I think for smaller organizations, you're 100% right there. I think they miss that boat of this is not just onboarding somebody to come and work for us, but it's really the whole employee experience journey of how they come into our workplace, to our
Yes.
workspace, right? Connecting with other people. There's so much. I think Gardner calls it moments that matter in the employee experience
Yes.
journey,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So you
Yep.
have like onboarding and offboarding are two of the big ones, right? Like having a baby is another one, or
Hmm.
um, something getting married or changing your name. Some of those, like, they matter to people because they connect to their identity and who they
Correct.
are and what they bring to the table. So it's important, like when you look at automating some of, like you got to be very careful where you're slapping AI to it, just for the sake of using the tools. You got to be
Right.
intentional. And I love the approach that you're taking there.
And this
So
is, yeah, that's what I talk about all the time is like, don't like smaller companies, especially, should not be intimidated by this at all. And they should be trying to act like a big company. Big companies got to where they are because they're acting in a specific way at a very high level. But that doesn't mean it's complex or is not attainable for the smaller companies. So this is where you can use chat to say, I'm this size company and these are the types of employees I've got. I want to operate at this type of quality level. Maybe you mentioned a book or a type of workflow or company you like. How can I onboard that person? Give me the basic steps for pre-hiring, for hiring, for day two, for 30 days, 60, 90. And that'll give you the rough framework. And then you personalize it. That's the back and forth with AI that I love. You generate something from your mind and then you iterate it with AI and you go back and forth until it's really dialed in. But that's what it's all about is working together with AI to really make that really great onboarding experience that does not have to be complex. It's just being thoughtful. You've actually
yeah,
stopped as an employer and thought about what's the best way to onboard this employee through their entire journey and then afterwards, so that they feel welcome
yeah,
and listened to. That's all you're doing. You're stopping and putting intention into how I want to learn how this employee does work, how they're onboarded, all of that. And when you can personalize it with AI with even faster time frame than you would do something in the past, then do that. Like you could have a query that you've developed that works for creating a little whiteboard video that welcomes an employee, and you literally just drop their name in there. Hi, Jason. Welcome to the team. We're
yeah,
so glad you're here. You're going to be starting like it's completely AI generated, and the employee will know that when they get it. But everybody likes hearing their name and seeing it in writing. So when you can personalize a little onboarding video with no effort, then why not do that and act like a bigger company? You're going to get a
yeah.
great result.
And really, I feel like this whole time we've been really talking about AI readiness, and I don't know that you can be ready to use AI without really tackling process. Is that
Correct.
too bold to say?
No, I'm biased, but yeah, I would say so.
Love
But
it.
everybody should be engaging with it. I know it's a hot topic. The topic will go away just like every other new thing that's coming about. But this is a thing that's especially for HR professionals, such a big thing that you can use to develop empathy and support and whatever keyword you want to use to make your employees feel heard. And that's going to translate into longer retention rates and better engagement rates. And that's why we're doing this, what we're doing, right? So
Yeah.
why not leverage this tool to augment what we already know and what we know we could be?
So be clear, focus on clarity, focus on ownership, who's doing what,
Yes,
handoffs, risk, understand the work before we try to enhance it with any of these
correct.
fancy tools, right? And um, start to ask yourself this question as to are we using AI to improve a clear process or are we using AI to speed up confusion?
Correct.
So I think a big part of week one in this program is all about should I use AI and when should I use AI? So, anything else you want to add? Anything else you want to share from like nugget? I mean, there are so many nuggets in our conversations. I'm loving it. Are there anything that you want to share that you want to leave the audience with?
No, it's just don't be afraid. I think that you should have a rudimentary knowledge, even if you know I can be an expert in how to use AI. And really, it's just understanding how to write the best queries, how to write questions that you can put into Claude or Chat or whatever you're using so that you get the right response. And then again, use that as the back and forth model where you're going to get response, ask it another question until you get to the heart of what you want and then put that into motion in a personal way. Make it your own, say it with your own words when you go talk to those employees, and that's going to make a big difference.
I love it. I love it. Prompts, no, process before prompts.
That's right.
Process before prompts. But even if you're prompting, be clear, be
Be clear.
thoughtful, make it your own. I love it.
Make it
Thank you,
human. Yep.
Jason. Where can we find you?
Henderberg.com. That's the place to go. And I've got a new online course that's nice and easy for HR professionals to try out if they want to learn more in detail about what I offer.
That's awesome. Thank you, Jason. We're going to put all the
Okay.
links underneath the video as well. So thank you. I
Thanks,
appreciate you
Lena.
taking the time and awesome. All like talking to you. It's always so cool. As I was saying before we started recording, I feel like our paths cross. We're like in different industries, but the
Hmm.
things we do are similar and at the same time
Yes.
so important to be connecting like process to everything we do in business. It's needed. It's there.
Very good. Hopefully, this conversation was helpful for people.
Oh, it is. I guarantee it. So thank you again.